Here today on RealAgriculture.com for Beef Market Update with Ann Dunford. Welcome today, Ann.
Hi, Sean.
And we're getting through August here. We're in the middle. Hard to believe the summer's almost over. At the same time, though, when we look at from a feeder's perspective, there seems to be a little bit of nervousness in the market. Let's talk about the reasons why.
Well, nervousness, and I think my response, first of all, would be understandably so. We've got oodles of outside factors, and yes, we always do have outside factors, be it exchange rates, or of course some very volatile recent news on grain prices, and we're looking at higher input prices from a feeder cattle perspective, I suspect, and so that's going to lead to some higher break-evens. Will it all come out in the wash? It could. But again, I think that's where the nervousness is coming from. There's going to be more dollars laid on the line to get the same number of head around you this year if you are a cattle feeder, and potentially it looks like more on the output side is in regards to costs, feed grains, and then again on top of that the Canadian dollar. Where does it go from here? So you think outside influences only affect trade and whatnot? No, it affects us right to the grassroots level on these feeder cattle.
Well, from a feeder's perspective, what's kind of weighing on his mind is having to balance dollar, very volatile feed prices. We've recently, I guess, off to the early part of calves coming to market, or yearlings coming to market, we've seen some very hot prices.
There's been some hot prices. Now let's just go back a little bit though, Sean. Of course, we talked all spring about the mud, the conditions in southern Alberta. For all intents and purposes, placements into these yards were extremely small over the last 3 months. We're going to get the cattle on feed report out this Friday for Alberta and Saskatchewan that's going to tell us July placements. I think they were small again, so it'll be the third month in a row of small placements. And I think the marketings actually were a pretty good size. Packers continue to kill a lot of cattle. So our overall on-feed inventory to start off August 1 is going to be small. You get empty pens, you get them dried out, guys haven't placed cattle for 90 days, and I think that's going to be an aggressive start to the marketplace. So that's what you're seeing. Are some of these yearlings going to move at these levels? It looks like yes is the answer. Even though grass is good out there and they probably could hang on quite a bit longer, it looks like the early start of this run is going to be very strong. Where to from here? I don't know.
So let's assume that all these variables stay the same. The one thing that potentially could bail us out is a higher fat price. What are we looking at there?
Well, if you look at the futures market off of Chicago, which I guess is our best barometer, there's no question that the expectations as we get past August, September is that higher prices are in the cards as we go forward into the fourth quarter of this year, the first and second quarters of next year. So those kind of levels do look like they're available to cattle feeders. But of course, as you well know, we have to then attach a Canadian dollar calculation to that U.S. Fat cattle price, which does look like it's going to move higher. I'm not going to argue on that one. But when you start plugging in the potential of a par dollar around that equation, and I don't know if it will or it won't be, but the experts are suggesting that it could be, then of course we're working back off of a par dollar. Even under a stronger market, it's going to take a lot to make these yearling cattle stay on the black side of the margin.
From a packer's perspective, do you think we're going to see a lot of contracts being offered?
Well, I think basis contracts are most certainly out there today. I think the Canadian packer buyer or packer operators do know that supplies are going to be tighter as we head into the fourth quarter this year, first quarter next year, just overall based on what we've done with our cow herd. So he is interested, I do think, at this point in time to put some cattle around him, offer some what would be called historically pretty good basis levels, and attempt to get some of the cattle bought that way. The problem is, even with those numbers today, Sean, it's tough to make the numbers work.
So with a dollar over par, potentially, or at par, let's just say at par, is our ability to ship south going to be really minimized?
Well, are you talking cattle or beef?
Fat cattle.
Cattle, live cattle. Well, remember her price adjusts to the U.S. price, right? So as the dollar moves higher, obviously the price moves lower here, and the suggestion is that unless our basis narrows considerably, we still have an equal ebb and flow between the U.S. and Canadian market on live cattle, fat cattle prices. Feeder cattle prices at the current rate, earlier suggested feeder cattle could be moving south. Given the kind of premium in the marketplace today, it looks like they're going to stay in Western Canada. But again, the change in the dollar can change that overnight as well. So pretty tough to go out and make a long-term or even a short-term prediction on where feeder cattle are going to end up. Today they're staying here. Ask me in 2 weeks where they're going. But again, I think our price is going to react to their price, and the ebb and flow will be the same.
How box beef then?
Well, that's, again, when we were talking about packers, that's where I thought you were going with that comment. Again, higher dollar lowers prices here in Canada on live cattle, and it does on box beef as well. So again, the pressure will be from the Canadian cattle packer to try to buy cattle cheaper if he's dealing with a par dollar. So this is something that flows uphill or flows downhill, whatever way you want to look at it.
So you're saying the Saskatchewan Cattle and Feed Report is the end of this week?
Friday, correct.
Friday. And you're expecting a relatively short number there.
Yes.
Is this trend just going to continue until we all finally realize that, boy, we are pretty short?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, strong seasonals there. We usually make our bottom for on-feed numbers on August 1. So is that going to be a big surprise? No, it's just that it's going to be down substantially from July 1. So as we then go into the fall run, which is when 80% of our calves move and most of our yearlings move, we're going to see those placement numbers increase through September, October, November. Those are our biggest placement months of the year by far. So you will see on-feed numbers pick up. But will they reach last year's levels? I think right now the situation would suggest no.
Okay. And is there going to be enough cattle around us to fill all these pens then?
Well, we haven't had enough cattle to fill pens for a long time, Sean. I mean, that's one of the stories in the U.S. that you've got overcapacity of U.S. cattle feeding space, and the same story holds true here in Western Canada. So, no, we're not going to fill pens, but we haven't for a few years now.
Yeah. So when they look at those numbers to fill the pens, do they take into consideration lots that aren't in operation anymore then?
They're supposed to be, but again, if you've got the infrastructure there, at the flip of a switch, it could be operational again. So there is some definitions behind what they use and what they don't use. But again, if the infrastructure's there, I do think they generally count it. If the guy happens to be out of business, he could sell it tomorrow and it could be operational again. So you're right, it is in the number in the database, but that's how they do it.
Well, Ann, thank you very much. It seems like nervousness is definitely the word of the week. We'll talk again in 2 weeks and see if we're feeling a bit better about ourselves.
Okay, super.